Sicocerus libani multiplicabitur in domo Domini. Annunziandum misericordiam tuum in veritatem Alleluia, alleluia, alleluia. Shout with a loud voice, joyful messenger to Jerusalem. Here is the Lord God coming with power. Alleluia, alleluia, alleluia. A reading from the Holy Gospel according to Luke. Glory to you, Lord. John, according to him, two of his disciples sent them to the Lord, saying, Are you he who is to come, or shall we look for another? And when the men had come to him, they said, John the Baptist has sent us to you, saying, Are you he who is to come, or shall we look for another? In that hour he cured many of diseases and plagues and evil spirits, and on many that were blind he bestowed sight. And he answered them, Go and tell John what you have seen and heard. The blind receive their sight, the lame walk, lepers are cleansed, and the deaf hear. The dead are raised up, the poor have good news preached to them, and blessed is he who takes no offense at me. The Gospel of the Lord. Praise to you, Lord Jesus Christ. It is not clear whether the Baptist is truly in doubt or whether he is preparing the way for his own departure. It could be actually a bluff. It could be that he is sending these his disciples to the Lord so that when the time comes for his own departure, they will not themselves get depressed, but attach themselves to the one of whom precisely he is the preparation. It's true that in prison, in a dungeon, he would not humanly have been very happy, but in the grace of God he was at peace. We do not know his thoughts in that dark dungeon, but the Lord understood all and acted and spoke, and the disciples went back convinced and so they were ready for the departure of their first master, and well able to cling to the source. In solitude, many thoughts come. On the feast of St. John of the Cross, one thinks precisely of the interior life, all that happens in the mind. These Carmelites are experts of the things of the spirit, and they analyze all the workings of the mind and of the heart. These two collaborators, John and Teresa, are both doctors of the Church. Indeed, Teresa of Avila was the first female one, along with Catherine of Siena. It was St. Paul VI who canonized them, or rather not canonized them, but proclaimed them doctors of the Church, female doctors, in 1970. These, of course, were part of the great Spanish Counter-Reformation, and it was a huge benefit for the Church of God. They gave us an interior life and language still used to this day. And we cannot escape the interior in the interests of working on the exterior with efficacy. We cannot bypass the motor. We can do many things and not be interior souls, and very often meagre is the fruit. Activism. We do our own thing, and the Spirit of God is not the motor. And we also lose intimacy with the one for whom we're working. For the Lord of the harvest, we forget the very Lord that we're harvesting for. It can happen. And Benedict XVI warned about it in one of his powerful teachings, the illness of activism in the consecrated life. It leads to hardening of the heart, and of course makes the soul easy prey then for the demon. But we need to look for a while at what happened. The young Juan, entered as John of St. Matthias, the existing Carmelite order, was sent to study at Salamanca University and was ordained, and was coming back to celebrate his first masses in Medina del Campos, where he was from, when he was intercepted by the great Teresa, who was 25 years his senior. At the time, he had a great interior life already intensely built up and formed, and under that he was moved to go to a very austere order. He wanted to go towards the Carthusians, which could have been possible because there can be movements towards a very austere order from another order, and he must have made this known to her. But she had other thoughts which were going to be decisive. Join this movement of reform, which of course initially was not intended to be a separate order, but as time went on it had to go that way with two separate general chapters. And of course he encountered great opposition, even being kidnapped at one point and placed in a prison of the order at Toledo. And the place where he escaped over the wall is still shown to pilgrims to this day. He wrote there actually great poetry, and he did not in any way fall short of experiences and grace, even in that, his humanly depressing solitude. Rather like Joan of Arc, he jumped. And of course, he jumped to safety, and his work then could carry on, still with us to this day. The Carmelite order traces its roots back to Mount Carmel and to the preparation for the Incarnation. Within the order, they still talk about the way that the notion of a woman to be was there. Elijah saw this strange sight, the cloud, or rather it was the Gehazi, servant of his, who saw it under his command, this cloud like a hand coming from the sea as he looked over there, over Haifa down to the water. Well, it would seem that the fathers saw in this something of the overshadowing of the Blessed Virgin and the Incarnation to come. Whatever The fact is, they are aware of it, and Carmel is all Our Ladies. I was living under their aegis there in university when doing classics, for the first and third year living with them in the Carmelite house at Aberystwyth, and going every week in Welsh to confession to the Welsh-speaking Father John of the Cross, precisely, an author and our philosophy teacher and a very good confessor. He would take time every Saturday evening and give books to read and really form well. It was far more than a confession. It was a great grace to have a good man of God for 3 years at that crucial moment of formation, getting to know the likes of John Henry Newman under his influence and so on. He also worked a lot on the translation into Welsh of the sacred liturgy of the Church, and actually even gave me at one point a bit to do, but that's another story. He then was somebody who was aware of where he was coming from, and of course they at Aylesford had the place where the present habit was given. Around 1258 Our Lady appeared to St Simon's Dock, and they still have the sanctuary of Aylesford to this day, a great Marian shrine. And at the end of the day we would sing, after singing the Salve and the prayer that followed, we would sing the Flos Carmeli. Flos Carmeli, it is jelly jello. Very beautiful and very Hebrew. She is the flower, the daughter of Zion par excellence. And when going to Carmel years ago, celebrating Holy Mass there, on that mount, I could feel the unchanging centuries and something of the still small voice. Elijah is a key figure in our spirituality to this day, and they still have in their motto, Zelo, zelatus sum, Domino Deo exercitum. I am with zeal zealous for the Lord God of hosts. The words of Elijah, precisely. Well, this is something that we need to take on board, for there are certain rules of the spiritual life that cannot be bypassed. There's no shortcut. John of the Cross is a sublime mystic, but also very grounded. We have to study him in detail in Rome, and the way in which he puts things in context and is radical is something which draws one's attention. If one is attached to anything below God, one is attached. Even attached to one's ideas, even to one's experiences. One is willing to enter into complete darkness and to have no attachment, so as to rest only in the one who made us. Darkness. There is too much glowing light in our life. Flashing lights, high decibels do not invite to interiority. And much of our liturgy is contaminated by elements of that. The latest is the itch to put on artificial music or the like. It's all clutter in the house of God and in the soul itself. We are afraid to face the eyes of our King head on. Is there not enough light in his light of eyes alone? But there is more. He goes on to indicate in the Maxims certain basic principles of spiritual life which are easily understood. One would be the way in which many words are an obstacle. Now that applies both to the interior and to the exterior life. He is clear that the great talker cannot be an interior soul. And so it is that that simplicity, that simplification that goes on in the interior life should have also its impact on the exterior. With regard to the interiority simplification, he indicates in striking terms the simplicity of our God. The Father only uttered one word, his word, the verbum. Therefore there's a certain simplicity. The incarnation is silent, and in that silence we hear a lot. When we come to it with our noise, we obfuscate it and push it away, as we do with each other when we talk a lot at each other. Now, from the beginning, they insisted on a structure of mental prayer which made that encounter, that risky encounter, possible. An hour in the morning of pure mental prayer, an hour in the evening, still maintained both with the brethren and the sisters to this day. When in formation in Italy, very early on, I was given contact with the guest house, first of all as aide, and then eventually as guest master, but it meant a lot of work listening to souls. And I remember one of the first to come on a good guided retreat was a lassie from Siena, and we thought we'd send her to the nearby female convent which was linked with us, Liceto, the enclosed Augustinians, which was full of young girls, very fervent and very beautiful liturgy. But no, she wanted to go to where Teresa of Avila had been. And there she went off to San Jose. And it was interesting to have echoes of the life in there. The double grata, the grill, where John of the Cross and Teresa of Avila would have talked together and perhaps even gone into ecstasy. The freezing cold, no heating. The old moccasins they still wore on their feet. The habits they had, which were quaint, which went back all the way to the foundress, and they kept as an heirloom. They were aware of their roots. Interesting. Authenticity. And when it came to changing the constitutions in the early 90s, about 20% of the female Carmelites opted to maintain the Teresian constitutions. Rome allowed them, and they are keeping to the letter what they received from Teresa of Avila. A very austere life, very penitential. Victims for the church. Saving souls without a noise. Simplicity. Suffering on the cross. And cross is the centre for John of the cross. He insists upon it when talking about people who wish for consolations in the Lord but are not willing to go through this portal, the cross. That is enough. Simplification also in wanting only the divine will, here and now, in the form in which it presents itself. Hic et nunc, in this moment, the cross that comes, that is my union point with him, not something else of my own preference or fantasy, a superior sanctity of my own making. The first penance is that of the cross that comes right now. I accept it, and in it I want no more. Ecce ancilla Domini, fiat mihi secundum verbum tuum. Misericordia